open up into the audience after a certain amount of time. Now, my first question goes to Oleksii Makeiev. You negotiated Minsk I and Minsk II. And can I ask you, first of all, of an assessment of the current military situation on the ground? What is happening? Is the ceasefire holding? And what are the decisive military developments of the recent months since the Minsk II agreement? The floor is yours.
Thank you. You know, I start my every morning with looking in my iPhone and checking the last reports from the front line. And every morning I see their figures, unfortunately not zeros, but some very weird figures, like, for example, number of everyday shellings of Ukrainian position. Yesterday, more than 40. Number of casualties. We have almost every day people killed or wounded in actions. Since February the 12th, when the presidents of 4 countries negotiated an agreement in Minsk, we lost 65 of our soldiers, more than 200 wounded, and the number of shellings are about 2,500. When you ask me, is that a ceasefire, I will say no, this isn't. Because when in the morning of the Easter you wake up and see that 6 soldiers died at night, it is something which has no place in Europe, in Ukraine, in the world. Unfortunately, after reaching an agreement, we went back home to Kiev, as well as German and French delegation to Berlin and Paris, with an understanding that we reached an agreement on ceasefire and will do its utmost in order to hold it. But the very same day, the Russian armed forces and the Russia-backed militants intensified their attacks to seize the city of Debaltseve. And they achieved that within a few next days, breaching the agreement at the moment of its signature. Nevertheless, we stick to our agreements. We hold the line. We do not put our forces into the direction of the militants held areas. We do not pretend to have more territorial gains. All we would like to achieve in the course of Normandy talks, in the course of the meetings of the trilateral contact group, is to go along the sequence of the Minsk agreements and of the peace plan of the president. And there are at least 4 elements in the whole constellation. First, one should cease the fire and stop hostilities. Second, withdraw artillery and withdraw foreign troops from the territory of Ukraine. Then, exchange hostages and return captives back home. And then go with political and social economic topics, and first of all, hold local elections, which would provide a needed basis to talk to the people who are legitimately representing those regions. And with all those legitimately elected people, in the course of local elections, which are to be monitored by the OSCE and shall be free, and fair, we will start talking about final political resolution of the situation, thus bringing peace back to Ukraine. So if we follow this logic, which has been put into the first Minsk arrangement back in September 2014, and the Minsk agreement and declaration in February this year, we would be able to return the peaceful resolution, to return to peace in Ukraine up to the end of the current year.
Okay, I have a very simple question. Why is it not happening the way you described? What is the goal of Russia and the rebels in killing these 65 Ukrainian soldiers? What is the goal in having these 2,000 shellings already? What's the concrete goal of these operations?
Well, we have to ask Russians about their goals, but I don't think that they would give you a sincere answer, because we used to know that the language of the Russian Federation, of Russian officials, is nothing but propaganda, and I would now use this non-diplomatic term, lie. I may assume that, and actually in the course of the whole rounds of negotiations, we saw that if around the table 3 partners gathered in order to reach an agreement, and another partner is doing its utmost to break an agreement, it is diplomatically very hard to succeed. If we look at the Russian way of behaving with its direct neighbors, I can say that they do something different in comparison with what European Union and NATO does. If everybody here in this capital would like to have an area of stability, security, well-being, and European democratic values spread to new countries, new societies, we witness that unfortunately in the vicinity of the Russian Federation there are so many hotspots, like now occupied Crimea, Donbass, Transnistria, South Ossetia and Abkhazia. So keeping up its neighbors at their orbit, not with benefits or common values, but rather with instability, as a matter of fact. And following this logic, I think that the main idea of the whole developments or the whole policy of the Russian Federation is not to allow Ukraine to rejoin its European home and to give an impression to everybody in EU that Ukraine is an area of instability. This is why it shall be kept out of Europe and close to Russian Federation.
But let me ask you just one more question about this, the Russian-Ukrainian war. Why is it so dangerous for Mr. Putin to have successful democracies at its borders, at Russia's borders?
I don't know why. I thought that democracy is something good.
Don't we all? But I think... Well,
and that I mean, this is a common values and common understanding, yeah? We have to address Russians. Is that bad to live in a democratic country? Is that bad to have freedom of speech? Well, or to choose your own way? To go for elections? To ask any questions and to put that question to anybody in the government?
Well, if I can venture a guess, it's probably because Russia itself is not a democracy, and the Kremlin is afraid that a successful Ukraine transforming to a rule of law and being economically also successful would be maybe an attractive example to the Russian population, and they would start asking questions about Mr. Putin.
I think that Ukraine saw good development of our neighbors like Poland, like Lithuania, and took it as an example for its own development and European path. Being a positive thinking nations, I'm absolutely sure that the Russians are also positive thinking. And as far as Ukraine develops into European country of European values, more and more Russians would understand that this way of living in the 21st century, sharing values and not waging an aggression and war, is the key to be successful.